wasn't turned on properly, because he always tells me when it's time to turn it on. And,
I was thinking, how long did it take you to notice?
yeah. How'd I do?
Good.
Okay, thanks. Wow, I was worried there for a second. Okay, so let's all be John Malkovich, I guess. Collectivistic people sleep with the children sleep with their babies, and we talked about this last time. White people, well, let's talk about white people as if they're all individualistic. They build separate rooms for the baby, no matter what, they build rooms for the baby. And they try to house the baby in that room. They always put the child in the room. They don't want the child sleeping with them. But more collectivistic people, they sleep with their babies when their babies are young. Classes of school children are promoted together to the next grade regardless of the performance of select individual children. Everybody is promoted. They're promoted as a group. So when you start school, you have a cohort group, and you will follow that cohort group, everyone, and nobody drops out. When I was in school, we had an individual that flunked, the third grade or something, and we lost him. He went back, and he never caught up with us again. But we lost him, and we lost several individuals while we were going through school. They just kind of flunked, and they had to go backwards, or they stayed where they were actually, and we advanced anyway. But in collectivistic societies, they don't do that. Everybody, if one person succeeds, they all succeed. That's the way they look at it. So if I'm a famous basketball player, all my class would honor me as they would be honored as part of my collective class. Despite the fact that I'm the one that is the basketball player, they would all get the same accolades that I would get. Marriages are arranged by parents. This is very common in collectivistic societies. If we look at Africa, we look at Asia, we look at the Chinese, the ancient Chinese, they still don't see romance as something that's necessary. The Japanese have had arranged marriages for centuries, for eons. And that's one of the aspects of the Chinese. So one of the interesting things about arranged marriages is that they don't have the same pheromones that people that are looking for somebody have. So when we're talking about Europeans have a select odor. Why do they have such a strong odor? It's because they use that odor to decide who to marry. And that's what pheromones are all about. But if we go to Japan, they don't put off pheromones. I told you the story about being on the airplane with the stewardesses. Okay. I hadn't seen my wife in a long time. My wife was stationed in Korea. And I was going over to visit her. I hadn't seen her in 6 months. And so I was really ready to see my wife, as you can imagine. 6 months is a long, long, long time. So I got on a JAL flight that flew from Los Angeles to Tokyo. And you don't fly across the ocean. You fly around, you fly up around Canada, up around Alaska, and then down into Tokyo. That's the way you fly. It's an 18-hour flight. So it was an 18-hour flight. We've got all these little stewardesses running around and feeding us and giving us warm towels and all kinds of stuff. They're just busting their tails, trying to keep, the 500 people on this plane happy. Anyway, so we get to Tokyo, and we landed at the airport, and we landed here, and the airport's over here. So there's a unirail that connects where you get off the plane to where you have to go, to the airport. So it's a train. So for some reason, I got to get off first. Not only did I didn't have to go through customs because I was going to fly to Korea. So I didn't have to go through customs in Japan. I wasn't going to do anything anyway. They wouldn't let me out of my hotel room. It didn't really make any difference. Anyway, I got off first, and I had all my stuff, and I picked up all my bags, and I'm sitting there on the train. And I don't know if you understand about the Japanese trains, but Japanese trains are very crowded, extremely crowded, to the extent that you've got somebody all around you. Well, so I got off, and I'm in the corner, I get into I go as far away from everybody as possible because I'm from Indiana. And so what happens next? Well, what happened next were all the stewardesses, there were like 25 of them. So all the stewardesses got off next. And so what did they do? Did they, string out like Americans would do? Hell no. No, they saw me in the corner, so they all came up and they stood right beside me. So I got stewardesses in front of me, I got stewardesses behind me, I got stewardesses on both sides of me. I got all these little tiny Japanese, and they're cute. Japanese women are cute. They're little doll people. I mean, they're just really cute. So I've got all these people around me, and of course I haven't seen my wife in 6 months. I've got all these stewardesses around me, and so the train starts, and I don't know if you've ever been on a monorail, but it's really shaky. So, because it's bouncing back and forth on that rail. So here I am, I'm bouncing back and forth on that rail. I got a lady right here in my face. I got one right behind me. The lady's pressed up against my arm. She's pressing her breasts up against my arm. What the hell's going on? I got them all over me. It's kind of like a standing lap dance because there were no seats. So I'm standing there. I got all these Japanese stewardesses bouncing around, all their body parts are jiggling around on me. And I'm going, wait a minute, I'm having no reaction to this. This is kind of weird. I mean, if somebody gives me a lap dance, I would react to it, right? Isn't that the way it works? Otherwise, why have a lap dance? You just paid your money for nothing. But so here, I've got all these women jiggling around all over me. I've got breasts pressed up against my back. I've got breasts pressed up against my arm. I've got this lady's in front of me, and her butt's just bouncing around on the front of me. I got the back of her bouncing up around, and I'm not reacting at all. I'm going, oh my God. I have to go see my wife. I haven't seen her in 6 months. This is going to be embarrassing. I'm not going to be able to react to her. So what happens next? So I'm worried. Of course I'm worried. I'm an old man. I'm in my 40s. My goodness, have I become impotent already? What's happening here? This isn't right. I haven't seen my wife in 6 months. I've thought about her a lot, but I haven't seen her. And I'm not reacting to all these little doll people bouncing around on me, pressing their breasts against my arm, pressing their breasts against my back. What's happening here? So I was worried. I was scared. I didn't see my wife in 6 months. So I get on the next flight. The next day I get on the airplane, jump on the airplane, fly to Korea, to Seoul. Get off the plane, there's my wife, and I'll tell you what, everything was fine. No problems at all. We just about... The Koreans don't touch each other. It's really kind of interesting. So when they see each other, they don't hug, they don't kiss, they don't shake hands, they bow to each other. And I'll tell you what, my wife and I weren't bowing to each other. We had a lip lock going that lasted all the way into the taxi, all the way to and everything was fine, everything was fine. So what was going on? Why in the world didn't I react to the Japanese stewardesses? They're cute little things. They're pressing their sexual parts against me. Why in the world didn't I react to it? And why did I react almost instantaneously to kissing my wife?
Because you're conditioned to your wife.
Hell no.
Because you're a good person.
Why did I react to my wife but not to the Japanese stewardesses?
Or smell, or I don't know.
Yeah, they put off no pheromones. So, my wife, as soon as I kissed her, of course you're tasting the pheromones on her lips. It's actually up here. It's not on the lips. It's on up here. Anyway, yeah, the pheromones. So I was reacting to the pheromones. I'm used to reacting to pheromones. So I was around people that weren't putting off any pheromones. They were like non-human, as far as I was concerned. I'd been around. I have two sisters. I have sisters. I was in school for 12 years around women. I'm used to the people I'm used to. I'm used to smells. I'm used to odors. I'm used to the odors they put off, telling you that they are sexually available to you. And of course, the Japanese don't put off any pheromones. And they don't put off any pheromones because they've had arranged marriages. They haven't had to attract a mate with their odor for an extended length of time. So the Japanese don't put off pheromones. Neither do the Koreans. But the Koreans do have an odor. It's garlic, because they use garlic to make their kimchi, and they eat kimchi with practically every meal. Anyway, arranged marriages. So this is very common, and they have arranged marriages in China, or they did. I don't know if they do anymore. The Japanese aren't getting married anymore. A lot of stuff going on.
So do they wear like a cologne or perfume?
They don't smell. These ladies had just busted their asses trying to take care of us, and they didn't have an odor. There was no sweat. There was no smell. Nothing. It smelled like corn starch, because that's what they use as deodorant. They don't need deodorant like we do, or like I do anyway, because, well, I'll tell you, my pits stink sometimes. If I don't put deodorant on, my pits really smell bad. But then again, I'm Western. I'm Caucasian. I'm stinky. Yeah, and it was your dad that told me. I was in a sweat. First time I went to a sweat, and I'm sitting beside her dad, and he told me how much I stunk. Nice guy, your dad. That sounds like your dad, doesn't it? Yeah, he thought it was funny, and he laughed. And of course, everybody's laughing about it because I'm the white guy in the room and I'm stinking up the whole sweat. Well, sweats don't smell strange anyway. But yeah, it's really kind of fascinating. So yeah, so how do they attract each other? It's arranged marriages. I don't know. I've never found Japanese women or Korean women especially attractive, or when I'm with them, they don't do it for me, Okay. Why don't they do it for me? They don't have an odor. They don't smell like anything. I can't tell if they're attracted to me or if they're sexually available. I know all this stuff. Why should we react to this? We're civilized human beings. We don't react to this kind of stuff. But the reality is we do react to it. Usually it's at a subliminal level we react to it. How did you know you wanted to be with the individual that you eventually are with? How did you know that was the right person?
My mom told me to marry somebody with a Mexican background, or Mexican,
Are you
in their
kidding me?
bloodline. Yeah, well, my mom's Mexican.
Oh.
So, to have more Mexicans. So anyway, I got with my husband, and he said he's Nakai Dene. And so
I
he
know
said
what that
that's the Mexican clan.
I know.
So for a whole year, I thought he was like Navajo and Mexican. I thought he was part Mexican. Right. And then the year after that, I ended up pregnant. And so I thought my son was going to be part Mexican, Navajo Mexican, Blackfeet Mexican. Oh my God. I found out that he didn't even have no Mexican in him. He was just Nakai Dene. I was so mad.
It's almost like lying to you.
It is. I think he betrayed me in a sense.
Here.
Yeah.
My wife told me she wanted to have kids. That's why I married her. But then she decided she didn't want to have any after I got married. Same lie. Well, not the same lie, but it's a lie. It's a lie as well. I'm pissed. I'm not that pissed, obviously. I've been married to her for 38 years. It was like the second year we were together. This makes you want to cry, doesn't it? We should just have a crying session. Companies compensating their employees on the basis of how long they've been employed. That's kind of like the military. And we talked about this last time. The military pays you for how long you've been in the service, not for your job. Sometimes they pay you specially paid. Not everybody. Extended families living under one roof. If we look at American Indians, not this group, of course. I don't know if you guys lived in longhouses or not, but if you go farther east, those guys lived in longhouses. You go up north, the Mandan and the Hidatsa, they lived in longhouses. One family would live in one dwelling, and that was the way they did things. They didn't live in individual houses. They lived in
houses that would hold 100, 150 people. And that would be one family. And everybody's in there together, stinking the place up. Yeah, strange people.
Many surveys reveal that Americans feel more financially pressed than before, even though real income has been rising and time pressures have increased as two-career families have become common in the United States. Despite that fact, people feel like they're under a lot more pressure than they used to be. In the 1950s, my mother was the only person that worked. What am I talking about? My mother was the only woman that worked. Fathers worked and mothers stayed home and raised the children, and that's the way it was. She was the only one, and for that reason she got, you can imagine how much crap everybody was giving her, because she was the only mother that worked. So they would want her to bake cookies or something, and she'd say, well, I have to go to work tonight, I can't do that. And they go, what's wrong with you? You're socially unacceptable. Oh my God, God's going to punish you and
What did she do for work?
make your children grow a horn out of their forehead or something. And as you can see, I've got a horn growing out of my forehead. I'm sorry, you said something.
What did she do for work?
Oh, she was a nurse. She was a registered nurse. Tough lady, tough lady. 4'8". She used to work in the emergency room. You know, the drunks would come in and they'd be giving her a hard time because she's kind of chesty. You know, skinny little, tiny little thing with a huge chest, and the guys would just be giving her a hard time, and she'd say, shut up and sit down, or she'd swear at her. My mother knows all the words. She was so good at swearing. She was like number one.
Did your mother go to college?
Yeah, sure, she had to in order to become a nurse. She had to go to college. Yeah, she grew up on a farm. They didn't have any money. This is during the Depression. So what she did, she worked as an au pair for a year. And that's how she accumulated enough money to go to nursing school. So she's a tough lady.
As a what?
Au pair?
What's that?
That's somebody that takes care of a kid or kids. Au pair.
Oh, okay. Back then,
Babysit.
though, like with my grandma, she was a nurse too, emergency room nurse, and she was a wet nurse at first,
Sure.
and then she further down, she ended up as an emergency room nurse, and I think they didn't make her get her degree or anything just because she was so old. And
Oh, sure.
they just kept her.
You know the weapons.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Feed somebody else's baby.
Suburbanization is another reason for increased individualism in the United States. Did I talk about what's going on with these people? Putnam in 2000 speculates that individualism has increased 10% because of these individuals working, the mothers working outside the home. And this is more common than not common now, with mothers working outside the home. Suburbanization is another reason for increased individualism in the United States, according to Putnam in 2000 again, and the factor is an increase of about 10%. Suburbanization results in people spending more time in their cars and in their homes and less time with friends and neighbors. We could consider, we can't really, but we could. Saley is a suburb of Chinley. So the people live in Saley and commute to Chinley. People work here at the college, and they come in from Chinley every day. We have students that come in from Chinley, of course. Chinley, I was corrected yesterday. It was you that corrected. No, it wasn't.
No,
Brian. It was Brian that corrected. Evidently, I can't pronounce the names of towns anymore correctly. Anyway, okay. So yeah, these people. And it's changed a lot of stuff, because if you live in the suburb of Phoenix, well, of course, Phoenix is there's like a dozen towns that are suburbs of Phoenix. Tempe, Chandler,
Avondale, Peoria, Goodyear.
Yeah,
Forgetting some.
Peoria. That's strange. That's in Illinois. Everybody knows that. Anyway, so these people have to travel. They have to travel in order to get to work. I used to live in Plattsmouth, Nebraska, and I worked in Omaha
And so Plattsmouth was a suburb of Omaha. And I drove 20, 25 miles a day. It didn't bother me at all. But I spend a lot of time in my car, which changes things. It doesn't give you as much time in your house, doesn't give you as much time with your neighbors. You get home and you just about collapse, and it's time to go to bed by the time you get home. You have to get up early in the morning in order to get to work. The second largest culprit to increased individualism among Americans at 25% is electronic entertainment. Now, he did this study in 2000, and in the last 17 years, this has increased markedly. People are on the internet all the time. My wife is on the internet all the time. All the time. She's on Facebook. She spends hours on Facebook. On Facebook, emailing people. She's intercommunicating with individuals. Some of them she doesn't even know. She's never even met these people. But they are her Facebook friends. So she's communicating with these people. There are individuals, not in this class, I appreciate you guys not checking your cell phones like every 30 seconds. But I've been in classes where everybody in the class, I had a class of 35 people, and they're all on their cell phones. I don't know, maybe they're even texting somebody in the front row. You know, they're in the back row, they're texting somebody in the front row. What is that? What's that all about? So people are looking at the computers, they're watching television, they're doing things that have to do with electronic entertainment. They don't have time to talk to their friends. I've seen people walking down the hallway, texting their friends, standing right beside another friend, and not even talking to them. Have you ever seen that?
Yes, that's weird.
That's stupid. If you're with somebody, talk to them. Don't pretend they don't exist. I've seen people dating at the same table, texting somebody else.
Ew.
I know. Are they in love? Well, you can't tell. She has to ask her friend whether she's actually in love with the guy that's sitting across from her. Well, if he buys her a lobster. If he buys a lobster.
Last night I was telling my RA, I said, because she takes care of the freshman dorm, and she was like, I'm trying to find an event that I could do with my dorm. And I said, well, here's the idea. I said, since your guys' age group is more about computer and electronics and stuff, how about you guys do a discussion on Messenger, Facebook Messenger? In your dorm, all sitting in a circle, you know, but using Messenger and everything.
Oh my goodness.
And she was looking at me like, yeah. But
So nobody's talking, everybody's texting.
yeah, but they're all
All
engaging in that same
Right.
conversation.
Right.
Yeah, but she didn't want to do it.
Well, that's okay.
But that would have been interesting.
It'd be nicer if they were actually talking to one another. Now, the problem with electronic entertainment, of course, television, it leads to isolated individuals. And this happens to me. Last night I got home last night, there's nothing on television, so what did I do? I watched television all night. I watched crap movies all night. I watched some of the dumbest movies I've ever watched.
Me too.
Why? Why did I do that? I'm isolating myself. I've got friends next door. I could have gone over and talked to Marius. Of course, he's watching Seinfeld. He's binge watching Seinfeld over there. Couldn't figure that one out either. Seinfeld, it's about nothing. The dumbest television show ever made. No, the worst television show is Golden Girls. All those old bats.
Games of Thrones is the dumbest
Is it?
television show ever.
Well, you have to have HBO in order to watch that. You can watch Seinfeld on TBS or something. What are we doing? So it's a passive form of entertainment. We're not even talking. We're not doing anything. We're just sitting there and taking it in. Sometimes you're not even hearing what's going on. It's all passive entertainment. I'm surprised we're not all dead. Maybe that's in the future. Putnam in 2000 discovered that the younger generations even watch TV differently. This drives me nuts. This is how my daughter watches television. She turns it on and doesn't watch it. Now I've got a hearing impairment of sorts. So if there's noise, I can barely hear you. If this noise interferes,
with my hearing, okay? Because I can hear this, and if you try to talk to me, I can't filter this out, okay? So, and she'll do this. She'll try to have a conversation while she's watching television. But the television is loud enough that it's interfering with what she's saying. And I have a hearing loss at her volume, at her frequency. So I can't hear what she's saying, but I can hear the television, which drives me nuts. So what I want to do, if she wants to talk to me, turn off the damn television. That's what I want. And of course, she doesn't do that because it's on all the time. And it's on crap television that I don't want to watch. She's not watching it. What's going on here? She has to have background noise. It's like people that they play music all the time, and then they try to have a conversation with the music. It's like going to a bar, going to a concert and trying to have a conversation with the guy standing beside you. That's not going to happen. It's too loud in there. Anyway, that's the way we're watching television these days. And everybody's watching Game of Thrones. There's several other things. Orange is the New Black is another one that everybody watches. I've never seen it, so I don't know whether it's wonderful or not. Why are we doing this? Parents and grandparents, they didn't watch television the way that people do now. The older generation are more likely to watch TV only when there is a particular show that they want to watch. Tonight, Big Bang is on. And I will watch Big Bang, but I don't think there's anything else on tonight. My daughter watches Survivor. She watches Big Brother.
I hate Big Brother.
People being mean to each other. Oh, this is a great show. Survivor. Oh, everybody trying to undercut everybody else. What a horrible message that is. I know.
Naked and Afraid.
I like
Oh.
that one.
It's a
Do you ever get to see anything? I like naked people.
Yeah.
No.
I just think it's kind of like a waste of having to watch stuff like that. Like Big Brother, you know.
Yeah. They're all
I think
mean
those
to each
other
other.
ones, you know, like hip hop. What do you call it? Where
Real
the females are
Housewives.
just acting a fool.
Well, what's your favorite
Hip-hop
show?
wives
I'm sorry, what's your favorite show?
or Naked and Afraid.
Naked and Afraid is your favorite show?
It depends on my mood.
Man vs. Food.
What else do you watch?
Like Man vs. Food.
Okay.
And then, I don't know, like good shows like that.
My son's a chef, so he watches those shows to get ideas.
Mythbusters.
Ghostbusters?
Mythbusters.
Mythbusters. My daughter watches that.
And
But I
other
think
crime shows.
she's in love with one of the guys on the show. The guy, the show with the guy that goes in and does really horrible jobs. She's in love with this guy. I can't remember what that's
I've
called.
never seen that
Worst Jobs. I can't remember who the guy is. I think she's madly in love with him.
Mine is King and Queens.
King of Queens. King of Queens.
Yeah.
Oh, that's with Lee Remini and Kevin James? Is that the show you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The fat guy and the really pretty lady?
Yeah.
Yeah, she just did an expose on Scientology, which is fabulous or fascinating or whatever. What's your favorite show?
More into the Netflix ones, like House of Cards, none of Master, I think was.
Okay. So does that cost you extra to watch it on Netflix?
Like about $10 a month.
Okay, it's not too bad. Come on, Brandon, what's your favorite show?
Big Bang.
Big Bang? I'm in love with Penny. I haven't figured this one out yet. I know! How can I be in love with Penny? I don't like blondes. But she's always been a blonde. I don't know. I'm in love with Penny. Haven't figured it out. But she reminds me of like all my ex-wives or something. or maybe it's my current wife. Yeah, that's right. I told my wife that Penny reminds me of her for some reason. Not exactly sure how. I haven't figured it out yet. I'll have to think about that. Yeah, Big Bang. That's a really neat show. And not only that, but there's a lot of science in that show. So you hear things and you can repeat them, and it makes you sound smarter than you actually are. It certainly makes me sound smarter than I really am. It's kind of a tragedy. Okay, so older generations watch. What do you watch? Anything else on Thursday nights? Is there anything else on after Big Bang?
I have Netflix and
Oh.
Amazon here, so
Oh, okay.
yeah, my wife's into Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, okay.
I usually start Facebooking or something after that.
What do you do on a Thursday night? Watch Big Bang and then go get on the computer, I guess.
Has anybody in here seen The Ultimate Fighter?
The Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah, it's about these women right now. It's a reality show, but it's about these women that are trying to become Ultimate Fighters UFC.
Okay.
And one of them, she's Navajo. She's from Wikichigan, and her mom owns Toto and everything. But anyway, she's fighting next Wednesday on The Ultimate Fighter, and it's really interesting, you know, because she's really young and she's the underdog there.
What's her name?
Nico Montano. Come on.
Nico, N-I-K-O?
N-I-C-C-O.
N-I-C-C.
N-I-C-C-O.
Nico, like those little candies?
Yeah.
Aren't those Nicos or something? I don't think about candy either. So stupid. So why are Americans becoming more individualistic? We were talking about suburbanization, of course, and television is separating people. Approximately half of the variance behind the increasing individualism rests with the different lifestyles between younger and older generations. Very, very much different. Of course, I see it because I'm from not the past generation, but like 2 generations ago. So I'm really, really, really old as far as that goes. But I see my students, the students that are non-traditional students in not just in this class, but in all my classes. I see that you guys aren't the same as the kids, the 18-year-olds, 17, 18, 19-year-olds. Not at all. For one thing, you're not stuck to your telephone, your cell phone. You're not texting all the time. I can't even text. I've never texted. I don't even know how to get a text. But you guys aren't stuck on that kind of stuff like some of the kids are. When I taught at Ashford, these were kids from Chicago, and I'll tell you what, I don't know if they even saw me. You know, I taught them all semester, but they were down on their cell. I know, they're not listening to me. They're more interested in their friends. And sometimes their friends, like I said, they're sitting right beside them. And rather than talking to them, they're texting them. And they're probably saying what a jackass I am. I'm not paranoid at all, am I, Jeff? Am I okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, right. Maybe I am a little paranoid. One of the most remarkable findings regarding cultural change is that people seem to be getting smarter. It's kind of exciting. Congratulations, you're all getting smarter. Talked about all the geniuses in my high school class, but this was a time when people weren't as smart as they are today. One of the reasons is because if you have a question about something, you can Google it, and you can find the answer. In the old days, if you needed to find an answer to a question you couldn't answer, where in the world did you get the answer?
Library references.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go to the library, find an encyclopedia. One of the reasons that I may have scored so high on my IQ test is because we had a set of encyclopedias at my house. So I could go and look it up. I could go look stuff up.
Didn't you have to update that every year, the encyclopedias?
Yeah, but you really can't do it. I mean, you've got a book here that is your update, and you've got all these encyclopedias. So you don't look up your one thing and then go to the book and see if they've updated it.
Oh, you don't throw the whole set out and get a whole new one?
That's what you have to do, but of course you're not going to do that. It's too expensive. You can't do that. So all your knowledge is ours was from 1957 or something like that. So
It was cool too to own your own encyclopedia set too at your home.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh sure.
I mean, because just for one book, they were like what, $20-some.
Oh yeah.
And you had to finance it, and yeah.
It's like $200. So when I had kids, the first thing I did,
Financing a book.
when I had kids, I bought a set of encyclopedias because I wanted my kids to be able to look stuff up. Of course, that was back in the 70s and 80s before the internet. But now, of course, you can Google anything in the world. People do. And sometimes the information they get is incorrect. So you have to have knowledge to know whether that knowledge is accurate or inaccurate. But people are getting smarter, and it's because of Google. It's because they've changed the IQ test has been changed.
So there are a lot of individuals that have higher IQs now than people in the old days, but the question is, are they actually smarter? And the answer is yeah, they really are smarter, because you guys can look up just about anything. I've been in a class where I said, well, you need to know this, and they'd go, why? I don't need to know anything, I can Google it. Well, maybe, but how do you know if Google is right? You know,
You can ask Siri.
She's always right.
Siri is always right.
She's always.
Google is always right. Sometimes you get, the first one says one thing, and the second one says something totally different.
You get two
So
opinions.
which one is right? Is Wikipedia always right? Ew, well, maybe not, okay. No, you can load up, anybody can load stuff up on Wikipedia, you can, and they joked about this on Big Bang. Raj was saying that what did you do last night? Well, I went on Wikipedia and screwed up all the on Wikipedia, which you can do. I mean, anybody can do it if you want to screw people up. But we're Americans, and we don't really think that way. We're going to talk about the Russians. The Russians started a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show. Now, if you've ever watched Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you can ask the audience an answer, and they will give you the answer, right? You get one of those, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? So in the United States, when they ask the crowd, they always give them the right answer, don't they? Do they ever lie to them?
Who's the bald-headed guy that is the co-host or the host of Who
It
Wants
used to be Regis Philbin, but I don't know who it is now. Regis Philbin's like really old. But in Russia, it's the same show. They ask the crowd lies to the person. They want to screw them up. Yeah. So they've got a totally different mindset. They want the guy to fail. Of course, as Americans, we want to see somebody get $1 million because that might be us next time. But not Russians. They have a totally different attitude toward these things, as far as that goes. But we, of course, we're not going to just go on Wikipedia and screw it up. Raj is going to do it, of course, because Raj is from Asia, and maybe, I don't know, maybe they're more competitive. Really strange thing happened to me over the summer. I went to a conference in Vancouver, and it was mostly people from England and Canada and Australia, most of the people, and the United States, of course. So they asked us a question, and the question had to do, this was in a social psych presentation, and the lady said, if somebody asked you for their notes, would you give them their notes? If they said, my mother was sick, my aunt was sick, and I had to take care of my aunt, and I couldn't go to class, would you lend me your notes?
Yeah.
And the answer, well, let's answer the question. On a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to give, or 1 to 7 actually is what they were using. How likely are you to lend this person your notes? 7?
8.
8?
So,
7?
So
7?
Strong 8.
You guys are such Americans. What the hell's wrong with you people? Okay.
Well, only problem is they can't not be able to read my notes because I kind of chicken scratch, but they can try.
I'm not kidding. I can't read your writing either. I can't read your handwriting. I assume that it's you that signed it. Okay, now new scenario. This person is very popular in the class. She says, and she tells you, well, you know, I'm not very good at taking notes. Could I borrow your notes? Even though she was in class, she could have taken her own notes, but she didn't. She wants to borrow your notes. How likely are you to give her your notes?
And she's popular?
Yeah, she's cute.
3?
A 3?
A 1.
A 1?
does she not take notes ever, or
She doesn't take notes
Just
because
that one time.
she's not very good at it. She's just not very good at it. So she wants to borrow your notes.
She's
Is she
there.
handicapped?
She's there, but she's not very good at taking notes.
I would just give her, I would say 1.
1, you're not going to give her your notes at all.
I said, 1.
1, you're not going to give her your notes at all.
probably like a 3.
A 3?
I would say 1.
A 1?
2.
2? I'd give her the notes. Why not? Why not just give her the notes?
Well, if it was that one time, then yeah, I'll
Because
help
she's
out.
dumb.
Or she's being
She
lazy.
sounds like she's dumb.
What if she's like handicapped?
Yeah.
Sounds to me like she's handicapped, I'll just give her my notes.
Well, if she's heading up the numbers.
She might
If
have.
not,
But if
then-
she's not putting any effort into it, then I'm not gonna
Yeah.
help her out with it.
Wow, that's kind of mean, isn't it? Not according to the Canadians, the English, and the Australians. They're never going to lend anybody their notes, ever. The highest number that they gave was a 3.
Why is
There were 4 Americans in the room, and I was going to give her the notes no matter what. There was another guy that was going to give her the notes no matter what, and the other 2 people were like 5s and 6s. But all the Brits, all the Canadians, all the Australians were 1s. Now that's really kind of interesting. Here we are Americans, and we're willing to share, except the person thinks she's lazy, but that's okay.
Yeah.
This table thinks she's lazy. Well, the rest of you guys think she's lazy too.
Aren't
Yeah, you're-
Aren't Canadians like really like nice, giving people?
You know the Canadians, you live up near
Well,
Canada.
that's what I'm
Those
saying.
jackasses come down from
And-
Lethbridge and
And they're kind of like.
Why do they charge $10 for their ketchup chips if they're so nice?
I'm sorry?
I said, why do they charge $10 for their ketchup chips if they're
Because
so
they're
Yeah.
so yummy. They're yummy.
like?
Because they have like 4 taxes too.
They're pretty greedy bastards. Oh, I'm sorry.
Ketchup chips.
Ketchup
They're
chips.
so
I don't know.
good.
Okay, but the whole point is, their educational systems are competitive. So nobody's going to help anybody. Nobody's going to help anybody. They may get in, you may get into college, if they help you, you may get into a college that they wanted to get into. That's the way they feel. So they don't help anybody. Their educational system is confrontational almost. Everybody's competing with everybody else. But in the United States, why wouldn't I help you? You know, we're not in as competitive a situation. And they explained it to me. And I'm going, this is ridiculous. They only have a certain number of colleges. In the United States, we have hundreds, thousands of colleges. But Canada's only got a handful. They don't have that many colleges. So it's not that easy to get in. Same way in England, same way in Australia. Very competitive system. Education is a competitive system. Why am I mentioning this? I can't remember. I had a point to make, but I can't remember what it is.
You were saying we're very American and Russians and.
Well, the Russians are extremely competitive. They want their fellow men to fail. They want them to die. They try to undercut them all the time. They have a completely different system than we do. Their mindset, their personalities are completely different from what we have in the United States. These ain't Americans that speak a different language. Different mindset. And we're going to talk about them later on. Funny looking guy. This is a guy by the name of Flynn. And he's the one that came up with this concept of the Flynn effect. The Flynn effect had to do with the increasing IQ of individuals over time. And he looked at it in 1987 and discovered that it was taking place. So then he decided, well, is this something that's happening every year? So in 1994, he looked at new statistics, and what he discovered was, yes, it's happening every year. So people are getting smarter and smarter and smarter as time goes by, at least from 1987 to 1994. A review of changes in IQ scores in 14 nations, not just the United States, but all over the world. He looked at 14 different nations, and it revealed that the average increase of IQ was from 5 to 25 points. Now, an increase of 25 points is a hell of a lot. If you take 25 points away from my IQ, I'm not a genius anymore. Oh. Yes, I'm not a genius anymore. If you take 5 points away from my, no, I'm still a genius. I'm still okay. Okay. 25 points is a lot of points, if you think about it. Is this significant? Is this important? If I can increase your IQ by 25 points, people are going to think you're smarter than they would otherwise. You may be a genius. Congratulations. If you smoke pot before the age of 12, your IQ will go down between 10 and 20 points. It changes the structure of your brain. Unfortunately, it really messes up your memory. So your memory is not going to be nearly as good. So you're going to lose IQ points, 10 to 20 points. Is that significant? Should we care about that? We're going to, if we're legalizing marijuana all over the United States, how are we going to keep the pups from smoking pot? How are we going to keep the 10-year-olds from smoking pot? Can we
What if
keep?
you have parents that are both smoking pot and you're just in a car seat, you can't even decide for
Secondhand
yourself.
smoke, I know.
Yeah, and like the whole vehicle is just,
I know.
and I'm just saying that
It's a
because
bomb.
my dad and his wife, they're like hardcore smokers, and to this day they are. He's a Vietnam veteran,
Sure.
And me and my brother and sister, we would just laugh because, our little sister and our little brother was in car seats and they're just getting this secondhand marijuana smoke.
Are they
But
dumb?
we didn't have to sit in there, or, we didn't have to deal with
Sure.
that because that was their kids.
Those are they dumber than?
Yes.
This is a tragedy.
So we're just raising a whole bunch of dumbasses.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. So maybe Idiocracy, and you got to watch that movie, Idiocracy. That's a funny movie. It's got Dax Shepard in it as some guy that's just as dumb as dirt. But it's not just him. Everybody's stupid as stupid can be. I mean, they're just so dumb. Idiocracy. And so this normal guy from the 20th century or the 21st century goes forward a couple hundred years when everybody's stupid, and he becomes the smartest man in the world. And his prostitute wife, they have babies, and the babies are the smartest people in the world. So they're the 5 smartest people in the United States. Even though he was just average in the 21st century. Okay, so what we discovered was that IQ points are going up. 5 to 25 points. But of course, we're losing them to marijuana, so this is a real tragedy. According to Healy in 1990, most TV programming communicates at a 4th grade vocabulary level. 1990, that was only 27 years ago. I know, 27 years ago. So can we say that we are communicating at a 4th grade level now? And we can quote Healy saying, well, in 1990, Healy said that we were communicating at a 4th grade level. So what about now? Well, we don't know. We don't have the statistics. Healy's not out there trying to figure out what grade level people are communicating now. Would you say except for the Big Bang Theory that deals with physics? And actually, I've learned a ton of stuff from Big Bang. I really have. And I quote Big Bang all the time. Some of the things that are what's the one about the cat in the box?
It was dead or alive.
Yeah, is the cat dead or alive? I can't even think of what that is now. It's on the
I think
tip
of
of my...
Chester's cat, but it's in there.
I'm sorry?
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, Schrodinger's cat. Schrodinger's cat, exactly. I know that was the whole first season was about Schrodinger's cat. I mean, who would know about that unless you watch Big Bang Theory? I'd never heard of Schrodinger's cat before.
I had a physics professor that liked that kind of, or he was a professor that liked that kind of stuff, so he talked about that a lot. Different
So you
theories.
knew it otherwise. You didn't even have to watch Big Bang Theory. There you go. You must be a genius.
No, I don't think so.
So what do we know about 1990 and 2017? We don't know anything but we do know that it was communicating at a 4th grade level. Are we using more intellectual television now? Survivor? Do they? I don't know. Big Brother?
American Ninja Warrior.
Are they communicating? Game of Thrones? Are they communicating at a higher level? I don't know. Really hard to say. The men born in 1890, only 27% had more than an 8th grade education. My grandfather was actually educated in the 1890s, and he only had a 3rd grade education. But he was innovative, and he invented things. He's the one that figured out, oh man, They started building trains and train tracks back in the middle of the 19th century, but they had to slow down going around curves because they'd flip off. Okay. So my grandfather, he built a grade for a train, and he banked it. And he said, well, this will allow you to go faster around that train track, around the track. Before curves, they always had to slow down on curves. They had a sign that told them, you know, you have a curve coming up, you need to slow down. And you need to start slowing down now, because a train, you can't slow it. Yeah, it's got all that weight behind it, so you have to start slowing down before you get there, like a mile before you get to the curve. But he started banking the curves. I know, and he only had a 3rd grade education, but it was logical to him. He had seen things accelerating. When he worked on the Indianapolis 500, and it was his idea to bank the curves so much. Now if you look at Indianapolis, then you look at Daytona, you know, there's a lot of difference between the bank. But he was the one that figured that out. And because he built the Indianapolis track he only built one corner of it. I mean, there were construction companies building the whole thing, different construction companies, and he only built one corner, but his corner was the fastest corner. Why? Because he banked it so much. And he said, when you accelerate around a curve, and nobody knew this because nobody went that fast. So he said, as you accelerate, then you can go faster around the curve if you bank it. You don't have to slow down going into the curves. And they didn't have to slow down at the Indianapolis 500 until, I don't know, the 1950s or the 1960s. Then they started getting up to like 150, 160 miles an hour. And now, of course, they go over 200 miles an hour. But he invented that stuff. It was his idea to bank the curves. And that's why the Indianapolis 500 became such a famous race course. Because of the banked curves. He invented the backhoe. Backhoe is a tractor with a hydraulic digger on the back.
Your grandfather?
My grandfather did, yeah. They didn't invent hydraulics until the beginning of the 20th century. And he invented it in like the 1920s. Before it was a steam engine, and you had to have all this power, and this claw came down and dug it up. But he thought, well, you can do that with hydraulics. You can do it on a smaller scale with using hydraulics. And he invented it. And being the Republican, strange person that he was, he didn't do anything with it. So the Brits stole it from us during World War II. We had backhoes. We took backhoes to England. And so if you Google it, it looks like the backhoe was invented in 1947. But we actually had backhoes. We took backhoes over to England during World War II. And my grandfather's the one that invented it. But he was too dumb to get a patent on it. I don't know. He didn't believe in government. He's kind of a strange fellow. Anyway, so he was smart in a lot of ways, but he was stupid as far as money was concerned. Damn it, I have all the money in the world right now.
Or he probably didn't know how to go about it
He was just being stubborn. He didn't believe in government. He was afraid somebody would steal it from him. And they did. The Army did. The Army stole it from him. They took it overseas. And then the Brits stole it. But in 1890, only 27% had more than an 8th grade education. Only 9% had any schooling after high school. Only 9% of the population. 2012, the percentage of Americans over 25 who have had more than an 8th grade education is about 94%. 58% had some schooling after high school, and approximately 11% had graduate degrees. Graduate degrees, that's a master's degree or a PhD. 11%, that's a lot of people with higher education. Throughout the 20th century until the last couple of decades, people were able to get by with as little as an 8th grade education. They educated you to work in the factories, and that's what they needed. They needed people to do these jobs. They needed to know how to do this. They needed to know when something was breaking. That's all they needed to know. I went to a high school that was in the middle of farm country, And it was also in the middle of factory country. So my education was different than if I had lived in Indianapolis. I lived in Muncie, or I lived right outside of Muncie. And we were right in between two factory towns. Muncie was over here and Anderson was over here. Chevrolet, Guideland, Delco Battery, what else did they have over there? There was a Chevrolet plant, there was a Chrysler plant, all these automotive industries, and they needed to educate the individuals to work in the factories. They also had farm kids, so they needed to know how to do mathematics, they needed to know minor physics. So they didn't really educate us very well because they just needed us to work in the factories. We were right there, we could make lots of money, we could get married, make lots of babies, get drunk every night. Everything would have been perfect. Factory town. They were educating us to work in factories. So we had lots of, we had math portions, we had drafting, we had wood shop, we had metal shop. These were things that they taught us. They didn't teach me because when I came along, I was in a class full of really bright people. And they realized, oh my God, we can't educate these people to work in the factories. They're too smart. They can't handle that. But my sister was smarter than I am, and my sister had to take home ec, which is not something that she wanted to do. She had to learn how to sew a dress. She had to learn how to cook. She certainly didn't want to do that. Anyway, so education, you can guide education in any way that you want. If you listen to Ray Austin's talk, he was talking about this. Ray Austin said they were educating us to be farmers and to be homemakers. That's all they were educating us for. They didn't want us to go on beyond the 8th grade. That's what the boarding schools were doing. And then, of course, everything has changed since the 1970s. They realized they were creating a population that could only work in the factories, they could only do crafts or whatever. And the same thing happened in the 1970s when I came along as well. Societies are always looking for scapegoats. Why are we talking about scapegoats now? That was education. Okay. Okay. In the 21st century, it takes some college to get by, and there is an ever-growing proportion obtaining graduate degrees. If you want to counsel, if you want to be a counselor, then you're going to have to get a master's degree. That's all there is to it. And there's not a whole lot we can do about it. If you work on the reservation, then potentially with a bachelor's degree, you'll be able to use this degree to do whatever you want to do. But you won't be able to go off the reservation, go to Phoenix, and do what you could do here on the reservation. Just the way it works. Okay. They have different requirements off the reservation. Okay, we're not going to talk about education. Let's talk about scapegoats now. Societies are always looking for scapegoats to explain problems that they don't understand. This has happened throughout history. Something happened, there was an eclipse, so the holy man, whoever the holy man was, we better stone that guy to death because he's the one that caused the sun to go away. Let's kill him. And if we kill him before the sun comes back, then the sun will come back. So let's kill him as soon as possible. Scapegoats. We're looking for scapegoats. Always looking for scapegoats. We have to blame it on somebody. Let's blame it on the person we don't like. Let's blame it on somebody else's family, not my family. Let's blame the bad people. Or let's create bad people so that we can kill them. In Europe, a frequent scapegoat has been alien religions, especially Judaism. The Jewish people have been the scapegoats for Christians forever, for 2,000 years. Christians hate Jews, which doesn't make any sense, because Jesus was a Jew, wasn't he?
Yeah, but...
No, he's a Jew, and he died a Jew. He was a Jew all of his life. So why did they hate the Jews? Why did they blame the Jews?
Because the Jews are the ones that said to persecute Jesus.
Kill the man. And the Romans are the ones that did it.
Yeah.
So we should hate them too. Damn Romans.
I've never met a Roman. Has anybody ever met a Roman?
Sure you have. You've met Italians before.
Oh, oh my God.
I
they're
know,
Roman?
they are. They are. I don't have any Italian ancestry, but my kids do. I know, my first wife had some Italian ancestry. They hate Jews. So they blame the Jews for everything. The Jews were different. They worship differently. What day do you go to church? What day do Jews go to church? This is important.
Yeah,
This is really important. What day do you go to church?
Sunday.
Sunday. Of course you go to church on Sunday. You're a good Christian. What day do the Jews go to church? They stop doing things at sundown on Friday, and they go to church synagogue on Saturday, and then the holy day ends at sundown on Saturday. So their holy day starts on Friday and ends on Saturday. I know, how wrong is that?
That's cool.
In the 14th century, the bubonic plague and other devastating diseases like leprosy swept through Europe. So they got all these horrible things. Yeah, you think you guys are in bad shape. We came over here and killed you all off with our diseases. We've been killing ourselves off for years, for centuries, forever. Bubonic plague came out of the Middle East. Leprosy, my God, that skin disease that eats your fingers off. How horrible is that? People walking all over Europe with their faces half gone and no fingers and begging for food. How horrible is that? So whose fault was it? Whose fault was the bubonic plague? Well, obviously it was the Jewish people's fault, right? They must have caused all the problems because they go to church on the wrong day. They go to synagogue on the wrong day. So they were scapegoated. And the Jews were always the best ones. They poisoned the wells. Obviously, they poisoned the wells to kill people off because they hate Christians. They'll do anything to kill Christians, even kill themselves at the same time. These beliefs led to pogroms in most of European countries, including Germany, the Ukraine, and Russia. The Ukraine is half German, half Russian. That's one of the problems with the Ukraine. It's one of the reasons why Russia's attacking the Ukraine right now. The western portion of Ukraine speaks a Germanic language, and the eastern part speaks a Russian language, a Slavic language. So are the Ukrainians Germans or are they Russians? Well, half of them are Germans, half of them are Russians. It's really kind of bizarre. Okay, and this is actually in the 1940s, they had a pogrom in a select town in the Ukraine, and they took all the Jewish people, stripped them all naked, and beat them to death. And this is a picture from that horrible thing. As you can see, she's running around in her underwear because they've taken her dress, they've stripped her dress off. And as you can see, it's not adults that are doing it, it's the kids that are doing it. This is in 1940. It's after the war started. She's Jewish. So evidently there's something wrong with it. The pogroms erupted periodically into the 20th century. Pogroms where they just would decide there's something wrong with society. I know, let's blame the Jewish people. It's kind of like in the United States, there's, I'm not making any money, let's blame the immigrant. Illegal immigrants must be the fault. They're the ones why I can't find a job being a professor. So we'll blame the illegal immigrants. How many illegal immigrants are there? 13 million. So obviously, if I can't find a job, it must be their fault.
Were you saying programs?
Pogroms.
Oh, pogroms, okay.
Pogrom, it's
Okay.
a Jewish word. I'm sorry, it's a Russian word. Pogroms.
When you say programs for some reason.
No.
Okay.
So anytime you see pogrom, it's somebody trying to kill all the Jews.
Okay.
And they'd go in and they'd take all their money. They'd steal all their stuff. They would kill all their livestock. They would rape the women if they could get a hold of them. And they would kill as many males as they could find. But of course, they were really good at this. They knew that this was going to happen. So they would run away. And they'd run away before they got there. And they would hide their women. And they would hide their children. They would steal them. They'd steal the children and take them back, and they'd raise them as Christians. What could be worse than that? Anyway, horrible, horrible stuff.
And they would just all of a sudden decide that there's something wrong with these people, let's go kill them. Somebody was raped, so obviously it must be the Jewish people's fault, because they are to blame for everything. They are the scapegoat. So they would go in and kill everybody. The same thing happened with African Americans in the South, to some extent, between the Civil War and the end of Jim Crow. They just decide that some white lady says that she was raped. This is what happened at Rosewood. Have you ever seen the movie Rosewood? Rosewood is on the Georgia-Florida border, and the lady claimed that she had been raped. A lady claimed that she had been raped, so the Ku Klux Klan decided that they were going to go find the guy that had raped her. And she said it was a black guy. So they went to Rosewood, which was a black town right beside a white town, and they went in to find the guy that raped her. And of course, they're all friends. These guys have been living together forever. And then but they couldn't find him. And then somebody got uppity and started shooting back. And at that, they decided they were going to kill everybody in the town and burn it. And so they killed like 117 people. It was ridiculous. They lynched them, they shot them, they raped the women, they killed the children. And the only people that escaped were the ones that escaped. I mean, the ones that could get away. Of course, they had to get away. So it's kind of like a pogrom in the United States. Anyway, this is horrible, horrible stuff, and I apologize. Of course, genocide happened with natives as well. Wounded Knee. Those guys were at peace. They had a flag. They had a symbol of the fact that they were not hostile to the federal government. But they killed them anyway. 7th Cavalry came in and killed them all. Killed as many as they could catch anyway. In the 1920s, the Nazi Party gained power throughout Germany, based in part on the platform of blaming all Germany's problems on the Jewish population. Now, normally they didn't blame natives for anything. They just were hostile toward you. You were hostile toward them to some extent, and that made them hostile toward you, and that's why they did what they did. But this is a completely different situation. Hitler claimed that the Jews were the reason that Germany lost World War I. And he took this idea and he blew it up into all the social problems we have in Germany are caused by Jewish people. And there are people in the United States today that blame Jewish people because they have more money than anybody else does. They're smarter than anybody else. Therefore, there must be something wrong with these people. There are individuals that hate Jewish people in the United States. And you can read this stuff on the internet. And unfortunately, at Charlottesville, of course, this was one of the ideas. They weren't just against black people, they weren't just against liberals, they were against Jewish people as well. Hated Jewish people. Once upon a time, the Ku Klux Klan hated the Catholic Church. So they would lynch somebody that was Catholic. They would lynch somebody that was Jewish. They just hated them. And there are still people out there that have the same hate. Anyway, okay, so this is going on in Germany. This is in the 1920s and 1930s. Research by Voigtlander and Voth in 2012 disclosed that German cities that had Jewish pogroms in the 14th century were the same cities that had higher rates of violence against Jews in the 1920s and had higher support for the Nazi Party. So the more they hated Jewish people 6 centuries ago, the more likely they would try to destroy all the Jewish people in the 20th century. And they have more support for the Nazi Party. Now, you wouldn't think that this idea of hating Jewish people would last for 600 years. But we're talking about Europe here, and yes, it did. It actually did. These were the cities that had that much hate for people, for these individuals. Okay. Anyway, okay, so this kind of stuff, it follows. So the idea that people in the South, that they didn't like black people, they were slaves until 1863,
or 65, depending on what state you're living in. They were slaves until 1863, 1865, but they still had the same negative feelings about African Americans 100 years later, 150 years later. They had the same ideas. And this is where a lot of this hate for black people comes from. It comes from the same towns, from the same group. Macon, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, Charleston, South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, Mobile, Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama. All of this hate comes from all these places where they've always disliked black people. So where do all these ideas come from? Is it genetic? Do we have a hate for people? Is it genetic?
I think so. Well, it's probably like something learned because I noticed with myself, I don't hate, but like with me because I've lived on a reservation,
Right.
so being around a different race, it was kind of awkward for me to communicate, and
Right.
I had to go outside of my comfortable zone.
Sure. And when I look at somebody, let's see, how am I going to say this? When I look at somebody, I want to know what they're thinking. And if I've never had any experience with Jeff, I have no idea what he's thinking. He smiles at me and I'm thinking, does he want to steal my money? Is that what he's doing? He likes me because he wants to take all my cash? Is that what's going on with Jeff? Oh, I can't trust this guy. Well, and and then you watch television, you watch Cops, and so who are all the bad guys on Cops?
The Mexicans.
Yeah, Hispanics and African Americans. Are there any bad white people out there? No, they're the cops, I think. Most of them are the cops, I don't know. What time is it? How am I doing? 13, okay, 1:13. No, that can't be right. What's going on? Oh, it's 1:50, it's 11:50, it's time to stop. Okay, we'll stop right here. And next time we'll talk about something more positive. We won't talk about pogroms anymore. I know, sorry about that. We won't talk about hate. We'll talk about we'll talk about positive culture rather than negative culture. As sad as that is. Wait a minute, everybody's here. Brandon's here. Everybody's signing this. I got you, Brandon. I got you. Okay, I'll see you guys next week. Just have a great time this time. I just love you guys. You guys are a lot of fun. Everybody but Chris. He's kind of boring.
We love you too, Bruce.
Well, you don't love Chris, though, do you? He's kind of boring. Of course, I pick on Jeff all the time, but